I never thought a routine day on my ranch would turn into the most stressful nightmare of my life. I was in the middle of feeding my horses, the sun warming their backs and the smell of fresh hay in the air, when my phone rang. The name on the screen made my stomach drop. Karen. And not just any Karen, the kind of Karen who believed she had the power to control everything she saw, even when it wasn't hers to control. The moment I answered, she launched straight into a tirade. "You have 48 hours to remove your horses from that property, or I will confiscate them myself." My mind froze. Confiscate my horses? That was my family's livelihood, my passion, and the creatures I had cared for since birth. I tried to ask her calmly why, but she wouldn't let me speak. Every word that came out of her mouth was sharp, judgmental, and threatening, and it became clear she had a plan that went far beyond a simple complaint. I hung up, my hands trembling, unsure whether I should call the authorities or try to reason with her. But deep down, I knew reasoning with Karen was like trying to tame a hurricane with a paper fan. Her reputation in the neighborhood for overstepping boundaries was legendary. Still, I had a choice. Let fear control me or stand firm for what was mine. As I walked toward the stables, I looked at my horses grazing peacefully, oblivious to the chaos about to unfold. Each of them was a living testament to years of hard work and dedication. I knew if Karen succeeded, it wouldn't just be about losing animals. It would feel like losing a part of my soul. I started documenting everything. Pictures of the property, video clips of the horses, and even old records proving ownership and health certifications. If Karen tried anything, I needed a shield of proof. A record of every step she took and every word she threatened. The adrenaline pumping through me was nothing short of surreal. I had never faced anything like this. And yet, I knew I couldn't back down. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Karen storming onto the property, trying to take what wasn't hers. I began plotting my next moves, contacting lawyers, neighbors, and even some local authorities I trusted. The tension was unbearable, and I felt as if my entire world had narrowed to one single question. Would Karen succeed, or would I find a way to protect my horses no matter what? But just when I thought I was preparing for the worst, something unexpected happened that completely changed the game, and it started with a single knock at the door. The knock at the door came just as the first light of dawn seeped through the curtains. My heart raced. Who could it be at this hour? Not expecting anyone, I cautiously approached and peered through the peephole. Standing there was a figure I didn't expect, one of my neighbors, holding a folder thick with papers, her expression a mixture of concern and urgency. "Morning," she said, her voice low. "I thought you should see this before Karen tries anything." She handed me the folder, and I felt the weight of its contents immediately. Inside were letters, notices, and documents that Karen had sent to the Homeowners Association over the past few months, complaints about everything, from the fencing on my property to the sound of my horse's hooves. But what caught my attention was a series of emails that hinted at something more sinister than just neighborly complaints. Karen had been plotting, gathering allies, and building a case that could put me in serious legal trouble. I felt a cold wave of realization wash over me. This wasn't just a disagreement. It was a calculated attack on my property and my way of life. And yet, within those papers, I also found something unexpected, proof that some of Karen's claims were false. Dates that didn't match, claims contradicted by city records, and even signatures that appeared forged. A plan began forming in my mind. Karen had underestimated me, and I had just discovered the cracks in her armor. I spent hours going through every document, taking notes and cross-referencing details. The more I dug, the clearer it became. I had the upper hand, but only if I acted smart. Acting impulsively could give Karen the leverage she needed, but waiting and gathering evidence would give me the power to turn the tables completely. I realized this would be a battle of strategy, patience, and nerves. By mid-afternoon, I had a plan. I would confront Karen, but not blindly. I would use the proof I had compiled, supported by neighbors who were willing to testify, and even the authorities if needed. My horses were safe for now, but I knew I had to prepare for any unexpected move she might make next. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the ranch, I could feel the tension building. Karen was out there somewhere, unaware that her threats were about to unravel. I looked at my horses, their calm presence grounding me, reminding me why I couldn't let fear dictate my actions. Every decision now mattered, and every step I took could determine the outcome of this standoff. That night, just as I began to feel a momentary sense of relief, a strange sound came from the barn, a sound that made my blood run cold and hinted that Karen might have made her move sooner than I expected. The sound from the barn that night froze me in my tracks. A low creak, followed by the faint shuffle of hooves. My heart pounded, and every instinct screamed that Karen had somehow crossed onto my property. I grabbed a flashlight and quietly approached, careful not to startle my horses. The beam of light cut through the darkness, revealing nothing at first. My stomach sank, thinking I might have imagined it, until a shadow moved near the stalls. "Karen," I whispered under my breath, gripping the beam tighter. And there she was, her face twisted with determination and disbelief that she hadn't been warned off sooner. "I told you had 48 hours, she spat, her tone equal parts fury and fear, but I had prepared. I didn't panic. Instead, I calmly raised the folder of evidence I had spent the last 24 hours organizing. "This ends tonight," I said, my voice steady. "Everything you've claimed, everything you've threatened, it's all documented. And it's all false." Karen's eyes flickered with anger, and I could see the wheels turning in her mind. She realized this wasn't the easy fight she had expected. "You don't get it," she snapped. "These horses don't belong here. I have the right—" "You have no right," I interrupted firmly, stepping closer. "Not without proof. And all the proof you've tried to manufacture? It's right here." I flipped through the folder, showing her the forged signatures, the mismatched dates, and the false complaints. Karen's jaw tightened, and for the first time, she hesitated. That hesitation was all I needed. I called the neighbors I trusted, explaining the situation calmly but firmly. Within minutes, lights flickered on in nearby houses, and familiar faces appeared at the edge of the property. Some held cameras, others simply stood as witnesses. Karen's confidence began to crumble. She had counted on isolation, on intimidation, but now, she was outnumbered and exposed. I could feel the adrenaline surge as she realized her threats were ineffective. She tried one last desperate tactic, lunging toward the barn doors as if to separate the horses from the property. But the witnesses had already stepped in, keeping her at a safe distance. The authorities arrived shortly after, responding to a neighbor's call, and quickly assessed the situation. By the time Karen left, escorted and fuming, it was clear that the battle was over. For now, I stood in the barn, the adrenaline slowly fading, and looked at my horses. They were safe. My home was safe. And I realized something profound. Fear may shake you, but preparation, courage, and community can turn even the darkest threats into a victory. Yet, as I finally exhaled, a nagging feeling lingered. Karen's next move was unknown, and the war for my ranch might not be entirely over. The morning after the confrontation, the ranch felt different. The air was sharper, the sunlight warmer, as if the land itself had breathed a sigh of relief. My horses grazed quietly, unaware of the chaos that had nearly upended their world. I walked through the stables, checking every stall, every fence, ensuring that nothing had been damaged in the night's events. Despite the lingering tension in my chest, a sense of calm began to settle in. The authorities had left after taking statements, and the neighbors, once just passive witnesses, now felt like allies who had stood with me against the storm. Their support had been invaluable, not just for legal reasons, but for morale. I realized that this ordeal wasn't just about standing up to Karen. It was about the community rallying together to protect what was rightfully ours. In the following days, I continued to review the documentation I had compiled. Every false claim Karen had made was now neatly cataloged, ready should she try to escalate the situation further. I also reached out to a lawyer to ensure that my rights and property were fully protected. While I hoped I would never need them, the preparedness gave me a sense of empowerment I had never felt before. Fear no longer ruled my decisions. Strategy and confidence did. Karen predictably tried to stir things up from a distance. She sent messages to the homeowners association, attempted to cast doubt among neighbors, and even posted vague warnings online. But her influence had waned. The evidence I had collected, and the community support I had secured made her tactics ineffective. Every attempt to intimidate or threaten backfired, leaving her isolated. As I sat on the porch watching my horses roam freely across the open fields, I reflected on what had just happened. This was more than a personal victory. It was a lesson in resilience. I had been tested in ways I never anticipated, forced to confront fear, uncertainty, and the unpredictable nature of human behavior. But by staying calm, gathering evidence, and seeking support, I had turned the situation around. My ranch, my horses, and my peace of mind were intact. Karen had threatened, but she had failed. And the lessons I learned would stay with me long after this chapter ended. It wasn't about fighting out of anger. It was about protecting what mattered, standing firm, and never underestimating the power of preparation and courage. The sun dipped low behind the mountains, casting long shadows over the fields. My horses nickered softly and the wind whispered through the trees. Everything was right again. The threat had passed, the battle was won, and I finally felt a deep sense of relief. But one thing was certain. I would never allow anyone to intimidate me or my horses again. And that's how Karen's threats became the moment that strengthened, not just my resolve, but my entire life on this ranch. And that's how I finally protected my horses and stood up for what's right. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more real-life Karen drama, and let me know in the comments, what would you have done if you were in my place?